Good morning. Our opening words are by Andrea Hawkins Camper, Be About the Work. May we see all as it is, and may it all be as we see it. May we be the ones to make it as it should be. For if not us, who? If not now, when? This is answering the cry of justice with the work of peace. This is redeeming the pain of history with the grace of wisdom. This is the work we are called to do, and this is the call we answer now. To be the barrier and the bridge, to be the living embodiment of our principles, to be about the work of building the beloved community, to be a people of intention and a people of conscience.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah. So, who here is tired of the pandemic? Yeah. I imagine everyone's raising their hands on that one. Who here is tired of it being cold? Oh, yeah, that's interesting. See, I'm a four weathers person, so I happen to like the cold when it happens because I know if the cold happens that my flowers, some of my flowers like my clematis, it loves the cold. And so the colder it is, the more it goes to sleep and the more it blooms during the summer. And I absolutely love that. So we're here to warm you up metaphorically this morning. We're so glad you could be with us. Welcome to First Parish in Bedford, whether you are at home or actually here in the sanctuary. So I have a few announcements this morning. If you look on the back of the bulletin that was sent out with the Zoom tag, with the Zoom link, you'll see that there are various activities this coming week, various groups meeting, youth groups, etc. The times and the days are there. After the service today at noon, there'll be a book discussion on braiding sweetgrass, indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants. Whether or not you read the book, you are welcome to participate. You can find the Zoom link in the calendar and on the church website. We're also having Children's Chapel again today during the service. And so children and youth are invited into a breakout room after we read the unison affirmation. After joys and concerns?
There it is.
After joys and concerns. I've been corrected. It's right here. I corrected and I got corrected again. That's fine. Please have the kids on their own device. I'll read this exactly as it's here now. To rename themselves CC name. I repeat, CC name, so that we can easily find them to place into the breakout room. So that's the end of the announcements, and let's do the unison affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia, y el servicio es su ley. Este es nuestro gran pacto, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad en el amor, y ayudarnos los unos a los otros. And again, for the Children's Chapel, CC name after joys and concerns.
I love this team so much. We have a good time. Good morning, everyone. Our story today is an adaptation of Tommy de Paola's Stregonona. You will recognize some components of the story, and there are some new ones. In a town in Calabria, a long time ago, there lived an old lady called Stregonona, which meant Grandma Witch. Everyone went to Stregonona for helping because she had a magic touch for caring for people, whether it was curing headaches or getting rid of warts. Also, many of the people of the town were hungry because there had not been rain for a long time and their crops weren't growing very well. But Stregonona's magic touch extended to feeding the people of the town as well. She always had plenty of pasta to hand out to everyone. One day, Stregonona needed some help to take care of her house while she was busy helping others. And after posting a sign in the town center, a boy named Big Anthony went to see her. Big Anthony had a big heart. That's where he got his nickname. He was happiest whenever he was helping others because it made him feel important and like he was useful. And Big Anthony did a wonderful job helping Stregonona with the chores around the house. He swept the floors and washed the dishes, tended the garden, cared for the goat, and every night he helped Stregonona serve her pasta to the community. From the garden, he heard Stregonona sing one song over the pot of pasta at the beginning, and then sing a second song when she was done cooking. Then she would let Big Anthony know she was ready for him to serve the townspeople. Stregonona would also blow 3 kisses after the second song, but Big Anthony had already stopped paying attention and listening so he could enjoy handing out all of the plates of pasta. Now one day, Stregonona had to visit her sister Amelia in the next town. She asked Big Anthony to be sure to feed anyone who was hungry in the town. And Big Anthony was so excited to have such an important responsibility and was already imagining how everyone would view him as so noble and so useful. Which is why he wasn't quite listening when Stregonona reviewed the details of the magic pasta pot with him. First one song, then the second song, then the 3 kisses. And since Big Anthony wasn't listening too well, he was busy thinking of, what should I wear to do this important job of caring for everybody? But, he nodded his head, and Stregonona set out on her way out of town. Now that night, people in the town who were hungry visited Big Anthony, and he sang the first song, and the pasta pot bubbled and boiled and began to fill with pasta. Then Big Anthony started to serve the pasta to the hungry people, and when it looked like they had had enough pasta, he sang the second song and then went out into the garden to enjoy all the appreciation from the people he had served dinner to. Then all of a sudden, one of the townspeople said, "Big Anthony, look!" And Big Anthony turned and saw pasta pouring out of the little door of Stregonona's house. Big Anthony ran in, leaping over heaps of pasta, sang the second song over the pot, but it kept bubbling and boiling and pouring out pasta. Without the 3 kisses, the pasta pot wasn't going to stop. The townspeople ran down the path away from the house, but the pasta flowed on right on their heels. At that exact moment, Stregonona returned from her visit to her sister and realized immediately what had happened. She blew the 3 kisses towards the pasta pot, now buried under the pasta, and the pot stopped producing pounds of pasta that now paved the path in the town. Poor Big Anthony was so very sad. He had only meant to feed people who were hungry, and he didn't understand what went wrong. Stregonona realized that Big Anthony hadn't really truly been listening to everything that was needed to care for the hungry townspeople, and that is how things got out of hand, or rather out of pot. And from that day on, Big Anthony paid more attention to listening, because sometimes a big heart is only part of what is needed to help people.
Thank you, Maria. I made a comment during welcome and announcements about this being a community of warmth. And it truly is. It's a thoughtful community. It's a warm community. It's a community that not only takes care of itself, but pays attention to what's going on in the world. And That is what makes this community so very, very special. Please, please support this community as much as you can. The offering will now be taken.
My dear fellow clergymen, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement, calling my present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticisms that cross my desk, my secretaries would have little time for anything other than such correspondence in the course of the day, and I would have no time for constructive work. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill, and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth, I want to try to answer your statement in what I hope will be patient and reasonable terms. You know this letter. I would hazard to guess that most of us have heard these words many times before, particularly on this weekend of the year every year. But you hear them again this morning. Particularly this phrase. But since I feel that you are men of genuine goodwill, and that your criticisms are sincerely set forth. Genuine goodwill, or what we might wish to call good intentions. I don't necessarily believe that all of those men who put forth these criticisms in 1963 necessarily had good intentions, and I would bet that King also knew that. But at the same time, there may well have been many who truly did, who truly believed in the cause of racial justice, who truly wanted to see an end to segregation, and with all that desire and their best intentions felt that the way to help that cause would be to criticize one of the key central leaders in the movement, to ask him to take a different tactic, a different strategy, to slow down, to ease up. This was a common theme, of course, for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and for really most leaders leading any kind of fight, especially anyone coming from an oppressed or marginalized group of people in their context. Just the next year, in New York City, King encountered similar pushback from Northern liberals. The Washington Post recounts it like this. In 1964, some of King's fellow civil rights leaders called on him to denounce a planned stall-in by the Brooklyn Congress of Racial Equality, a civil rights group protesting job discrimination and housing and school segregation. Frustrated by local leaders' lack of urgency and minimal change, Brooklyn Core sought to draw attention to rampant inequality by stalling cars to block highways leading to the World's Fair at Flushing Meadows, forcing people to stop and see the inequality and poverty they passed on the way. Horrified, other activists attacked the idea, and they called on King to do the same. But he refused. "We do not need allies who are more devoted to order than justice." In a letter to civil rights leaders, he wrote, "I hear a lot of talk these days about our direct action program alienating former friends. I would rather feel that they are bringing to the surface many latent prejudices which were always there." How easy it is for men of genuine goodwill, for people with good intentions, to reinforce the systems of power and oppression that are so baked into our institutions and our culture. It's very easy for all of us to have a good intention and a negative impact. Big Anthony, with his big heart and his inattentive listening, flooding the streets with pasta. I bet many of us can relate. In fact, this gap between intentions and impact is often addressed in our Unitarian Universalist covenants, because we know it is a part of being human. One of my favorite phrases in a covenant to address this gap is, "Assume good intentions and attend to impact." I like that one because it has that nice both and. We assume the good intentions. We see the love in the people that we're working with in this group, but we also attend to the impact, to whatever their actions have actually caused. To me, it's a beautiful theological statement, in fact, a true Unitarian Universalist statement. That universalism of assuming the good and seeing the love, and also taking accountability for what has actually happened. And it's so important because the thing is, we cannot control the impact of our actions, much to my dismay. Though I have never done real golfing, I have done mini golfing, and to me it seems a little bit like golfing. You can see that hole, and you can see maybe the little loop-de-loop if you're doing a mini golfing situation, and you can make an idea of how to get the ball to the hole, and you swing and you try, but sometimes it goes in a pond, and you have to fish it out. It's easy to estimate a little wrong and get your ball way off course. One of the anecdotes I often think of from my own life when I think about the good intentions going astray comes from when I was doing my clinical pastoral education, which I believe I've referenced before. It was an internship experience required for my ministerial formation. And we were working as hospital chaplains, and there was a small group of us doing this educational experience. And we were a funny little crew. There were 3 of us, and we were working in a hospital in central Illinois. I was living in my parents' house at the time. I was fresh out of my very first year of seminary, a mere 24 years old. And there I was working with one young man who had been brought to the United States from Latin America by the Catholic Church, trying to address a shortage of priests in the United States. And another woman, a good deal older than me, a mother of 6, who lived in rural Illinois and was part of the Apostolic Pentecostal faith. One of her beliefs was that women should not cut their hair, and so she was referred to by many in the hospital as the long-haired chaplain. So we were all quite different people, the 3 of us in this group, and our supervisor was a supervisor in training. He was a black man who had been studying how to support chaplains and had been a chaplain for quite some time. And one day we had a lesson for our group, and it was about intercultural competency. It was about how you might serve as a chaplain to someone who has a different racial identity than you, a different cultural background than you. And again, I was fresh out of 1 year of seminary, and I had been taking systematic theology with Dr. James Cone, who is a black liberation theologian, may he rest in peace, who taught fiercely about the violent impacts of white supremacy, and I was feeling fired up. And I think maybe you can relate. Maybe you too have, at some time in your life, felt very fired up when you maybe were newly learning about some important issue, an important social justice cause, and maybe you felt a little bit indicted, a little bit guilty, and maybe that made you want to try really hard to combat that issue. At least I've seen that happen to other people. It definitely happened to me. So I was trying really hard to be a good white person. And I went on a whole rant about how, yes, and this competency wasn't enough, and we had to decenter whiteness, and we had to address the power dynamics, and all of these things. And the other 2 chaplains in training looked at me like how they kind of looked at me when I suggested that God didn't have a gender, just with this confusion on their faces. Like, what? As a Unitarian Universalist, I didn't quite always translate well for the Apostolic, Pentecostal, and the Catholic. Later, my supervisor had a conversation with me and explained to me the impact of my rant. He explained that he was really being very strategic in his lesson, and he was meeting that cohort where we were at, providing a lesson that would work for all 3 of us, being very different people. That as a black man working in a predominantly white hospital and area and institution, he had a lot of experience with navigating these power dynamics, and that my rant was undermining of his expertise and his life experience. Whoops. I was trying so hard to be the good white person that I had the opposite impact. And the thing is, that's another really easy trap to fall into as humans, that we try so hard to have a certain certain impact with our good intentions that we actually end up doing the opposite. I imagine it's not just me, and that maybe there's some other people in this congregation that have had, we don't talk about Bruno, no, 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 and what else can I do? And pressure like a drip, drip, drip that'll never stop. Whoa. In constant rotation in your house, or in your car, or coming out of your children's mouths. For anyone who is not clued into the latest Disney film, these are some little snippets from the Encanto soundtrack, a film that I would recommend to anybody, whether you have children in your life or not. It's a lovely, magical film about a family living in Colombia and some of the family dynamics that come up for them around their magical powers. Now, without trying to give too much away in case you haven't seen the film, I do want to say that the grandmother in this movie, the abuela, she is a prime example of trying so hard with such good intentions that you have the opposite impact. She wants her family to be safe and well. She wants to protect her home and her community. She works so hard at it that she puts too much pressure on her children and her grandchildren, on the house itself. Things do work out in the end because it's a Disney movie, but at one of the low points of the film, when things are looking hard and bad, we learn a little more about why Abuela, the grandmother, is holding on so tight. We learn that she has had a very traumatizing life experience of losing her community and her family and her home. And because of that pain in her, she has a lot of fear. And she takes that fear and turns it into an attempt to control. But as I mentioned earlier, we can't actually control the impact of our actions. We can just hit the golf ball and watch it fly. But this is another big reason that our good intentions go astray. When we act out of our own ego needs, informed by our pain or loss, our traumas of the past, this unhealed pain is a big reason that we struggle to have the impacts we hope to have. So between the systems like white supremacy and patriarchy and capitalism and our own personal pain, well, it's no wonder that we humans pave the road to hell with our good intentions. But what can we do? Well, first of all, just that awareness can go a long way. The awareness of these systems that inform our culture and our structures and our institutions, an awareness of our own internal landscape, pain and drives. Those two things can go far in helping us adjust and calculate a little better with the impacts of our actions. So doing our own work on unlearning systems of oppression and on healing ourselves, maybe that's in therapy, or hey, maybe join that anti-racism discussion group that some people in this congregation are hosting. But more importantly than trying to solve these issues through personal development, what I've learned is that we really need other people and communities of support if we're going to align our impact a little more with our intentions. Going back to my clinical pastoral education, I often speak about how important this program was to me. And the reason it was so important was because it was such a unique model of learning and it worked so well. We would go and we would do some chaplaincy, and then we would come back and we would do what they called a verbatim, which I think is probably common in many clinical learning settings, where you write down everything that happened, and then we'd process it as a group and get feedback, and we could really kind of sort out when something might be coming from our own unhealed pain. Like, I could have reflected back to me that maybe I was acting out of The part of me that was hurt by the fundamentalist Christians I grew up with, who told me I was going to hell, and that maybe that was showing up in how I was being a chaplain to people who held fundamentalist Christian beliefs in the hospital then as an adult. It really helps to have spaces like that, and while having such an intensive structure like I had for this training is not realistic, we can set up friendships and relationships that help us to do a gut check, that help us like a mirror that can reflect back so we can see when our own pain or ego needs are causing us to hold on too tight or react in ways that are counter to what we're intending. And then on a systemic level, I've been so lucky to organize with really brilliant people who have taught me so much about aligning our intentions with our impact politically. The Immigration Justice Network I'm part of has a bond fund, and that bond fund is a member of a larger network, the National Bail and Bond Fund Network. And they had a convening this past year with a bunch of different panels and workshops. And one of the panels was called Reformist Reforms, or maybe it was called Avoiding Reformist Reforms or something like that. But it was about the idea that it can be very, very easy to have very good intentions to make things better and end up just sort of strengthening the systems you're trying to tear down by making a slightly better version. It was really helpful to hear examples. And there's actually a chart with a series of questions that I find incredibly useful for discerning in my own work around trying to end immigration jail, whether a reform and improvement is actually helping us get closer to abolition, to ending the whole system, or whether it's strengthening the system, but making it maybe slightly better. So the questions are, does this reduce the number of people imprisoned under surveillance or under other forms of state control? Does it reduce the reach of jails, prisons, and surveillance in our everyday lives? Does it create resources and infrastructures that are preventative and accessible without police and prison guards? Does it strengthen our capacity to prevent or address harm and create processes for accountability? In other words, does it make the criminal punishment and carceral system less powerful while strengthening our capacity to deal with these issues in more loving, just ways? Or does it strengthen the carceral system but make it a little kinder? As one of the presenters in the panel, Dylan Rodriguez, who is a professor in media and cultural studies at UC Riverside, said, "We need to depart from casualty management and leave behind ceremonies that legitimate state violence." I found that to be a very powerful quote, and I find it hard to imagine, because there are so many casualties to manage, and all we see on the news and in our government are ceremonies that legitimize state violence. I don't need to tell you the litany of what we're up against. I don't need to inform you of the basic human rights that people fought and sacrificed and even died for that are being wildly torn apart. I know that you know. We are so human, and we are in such desperate times. The structures of violence and oppression that have long shaped our world are laid bare in increasingly distressing ways. And here we are, carrying our own pain and tending to our own wounds. And we do have good intentions. we really care, and we move towards connection and love. We try to do what is right again and again. It's a beautiful, glorious, miraculous thing. And that's why I'm not giving up. Every time I get stuck in a place of despair, and trust me, it happens a lot, there is something that lifts me up. It's a love that won't ever quite let go. It's that part of me that says, no, let's keep trying and try again. It's that part of me that sees others trying and trying again. And I believe in us, in our good intentions, and I believe in a love that lifts us up.
I'm broken hearted, knocked down on the floor. I hear a whisper saying, try once more. Still
Beloveds, we're up against a lot. And there are many forces to knock our good intentions astray. Large, historical, systemic forces and the forces of our own broken hearts. But never forget that we are in community so that we can lift each other up. Help each other to strengthen all that is good in us. Make it stronger so we can aim for that vision, that world that we know can be. Let us be about that work. Lift each other up and dance in the process if you're so moved. May it be so.